Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. I'm James Baggott. I'm the founder of Car Dealer Magazine, and today I'm chatting to Catherine Faiers. She's from Auto Trader. She's the COO. Catherine, how are you?
Hi, James. I'm very well, thank you. Excited about September and being back in the office and back in business and all things moving forward fast. And
Lots
good to
of
be back here again.
Very nice to see you. Thank you for giving up your time. I think today we're going to sort of concentrate on the new car market, aren't we? With September, we're obviously in that month where new cars is the order of the game when it comes to the automotive industry. Let's just start with the market though, as it is. I mean, I don't know what you're hearing out there, but it's certainly from my contacts, they're saying it's a real mixed bag. It's a difficult market, is the way many dealers are describing it to me. What are they telling you?
Well, I think you said it, September's always a massive month for the industry. And the market momentum that we see coming out of the summer is so important for that trading performance we then see for this final quarter of the year. We always obsess over the metrics and the data, but never more so than at this time of year because of that dynamic. We try and combine that data and insight we see on our platform with then listening to retailers. What are they telling us? We've got 300 or so people in our partnership team out there talking to retailers every day. And through those two data sources, what we're seeing on our platform and then what we're hearing, um, I think we're kind of cautiously optimistic about where the market is at the moment. If you start with the very macro and what we're seeing in consumer confidence, in the data on affordability and retail sales overall, those kind of health indicators actually look pretty positive. If you then bring it down to what we're seeing on Auto Trader in those first few days of September, when it comes to consumer demand, pricing, supply, those metrics similarly, demand looks strong, robust, very strong on new car, and still positive on used, up kind of high single digit percentage points year on year. Supply side still tough, definitely still a challenge, but overall that gives us a pretty strong used car market health. As ever, the challenge is always in the detail, in the overall market metrics look pretty good, but when you start breaking that data down into cohorts of vehicles, whether it's the differences we're seeing in new EVs and younger EVs versus ICE, or some of the older cohorts of vehicles as well, where we're seeing very different market dynamics. So I think that summary of, there are opportunities, but also pockets where it's really quite challenging, reflects very much what we're seeing in the data, and then that feedback that we're seeing and hearing from our retailer partners.
The ZEV mandate is really causing some headaches out there, though, isn't it? I mean, it's absolutely dominating the headlines. We've seen it start making national newspaper headlines last week after Robert Forrester's comments. It is skewing the market a little bit, isn't it? I mean, what are you seeing on the ZEV mandate front?
Well, there's no doubt that stimulating new electric vehicle demand remains a big challenge, if not the biggest challenge facing brands and retailers at the moment. We all know that private new car sales are not where they need to be. The volume of electric vehicles have been driven by fleet and business registrations, and some of that demand from fleet and businesses will just naturally unwind in the coming months, and we'll see the industry much more dependent on retail demand to drive those registration numbers. We know that two-thirds of brands are still not where they need to be when it comes to that ZEV mandate. And they're going to have to weigh up some of those very difficult and probably quite unpalatable choices in many ways. Yeah, those brands are going to have to either move towards more distressed discounting, stronger discounts. We're already seeing discounts up significantly year on year and month on month, or they're going to have to think about paying the fines, buying credits, pushing EV registration targets perhaps down the road with the catchbacks that are there in or are available in 2025 or 2026. And we are seeing already some brands pulling back some of the more profitable and much needed ICE sales to try and hit that 22% target. So you're right, lots of different behaviors and strategies from different brands that are definitely distorting what we're seeing in that new EV registration data and number. We have seen that average discount grow from about 7% to 11% on Auto Trader for new electric vehicles. Overall, we're seeing new electric vehicle demand growing, but not growing at a rate that is going to enable brands organically to hit that 22% number. We're actually publishing this week, I think it is, our next Road to 2035 report. We publish this report every few months, and we do a lot of work with the government, with industry bodies, to try and present what we think are the actions that need to be taken for there to be a fair and successful transition to electric vehicles for the industry overall. And that talks about transparency in road pricing, taxes, and support for the industry to speed up charging and other installation that we know needs to happen for that transition, the transition that's now here and very much upon us to be a success.
So when it comes to that, I mean, what incentives do you think need to be in place to boost this EV demand at the moment? Is it something like a VAT cut? Is it a scrappage scheme? I mean, what would resonate with consumers? I mean, you talk to consumers all the time. What do they want to encourage them into buying these electric vehicles that at the moment they're not buying?
Well, some of the obvious things we hear and see are around some of the very clear inequities that exist between ICE and EV vehicles. So one of the obvious ones is the VAT rate on charging your vehicle at home versus charging in a public in the public infrastructure. We see that most of the EV early adopters that have embraced the electric transition have been people that have a driveway, access to at-home charging, and have been people from slightly higher income demographics. We're now to hit this 22% number in a world where we need to be able to convince that next cohort of consumers and approach a mass adoption point. VAT on charging and potentially VAT on the vehicle as well as some of the obvious routes that just feel, whilst all of them come with costs, they feel manageable from an industry perspective. And um, there are also changes to do with how roads are charged for in the future that the government's currently talking about, where actually, if we can be influencing early and presenting options to enable the transition, then we're hopeful that we can have some impact. But you are right; it is that overall affordability headline that for consumers at the moment just isn't stacking up. Most people are not prepared to pay a 30% plus premium to make that switch into an electric vehicle.
I find as an industry, we haven't really come up with a solution to what that incentive is just yet. I mean, there's many ideas out there floating around, but none of them seem to be landing. Do you think the government is going to listen to the industry and do something about this? And do you think it will be combined with an announcement that they'll bring the ban of petrol and diesel cars back to 2030?
Well, I think one of the reasons the industry hasn't perhaps reached a consensus is because, short of heavily discounting the headline price, there's no one single solution that will suddenly make EVs comparatively a lot more affordable, short of some big subsidy from the government, which we know hasn't been on the table for a number of years. So the things being proposed are a combination of multiple solutions and options that will all help incrementally to make that total cost of ownership gap narrow and be much, much closer. So it does become a more rationally economic decision for consumers. We are still expecting later this month the government to announce a series of environmental initiatives. The sentiment and commitment very much was initially that they would return the date of the ban for consumers to that 2030 date. We're still expecting that to be the case, which I think, I mean, there's been lots of debate about is it more confusing to actually change the date back again for consumers? There's already enough confusion around some of the headlines that we're reading around electric vehicles, or is it net positive because actually you're bringing that 2030 back closer in line with the ZEV mandate that we're seeing? I think net it would still be broadly more positive for the date to be brought back to 2030, given the industry targets that are very publicly out there. We need consumers to be thinking about their next switch, their next vehicle purchase to be the moment when they transition, not the second or third transaction into the future.
You've mentioned there, as we're chatting away, about these car manufacturers restricting the supply of petrol and diesel cars. These big discounts that are happening for EVs towards the end of this year. What do consumers make of all this? I mean, what do consumers walking into a dealership and not being able to order the car that they want make of that and the industry?
Well, I think what we are seeing on our platform is we are seeing brand loyalty, particularly among new car consumers, has eroded incredibly fast. So we are seeing new car consumers coming to market, looking at the vehicles that are available to them, the physical live stock that is there, and actually being very open minded and prepared to switch between brands and between the make models that they can see. We are all now used to living in a world of immediacy when it comes to retail sales. We're used to things arriving the same day, the next day, and being very available to us. And we are seeing a shift in consumers focusing much more to the market that is there and is in front of them. Some of that's been driven by electric vehicles. It's a fundamentally different product from buying an ICE vehicle, and consumers are prepared to consider more brands, new brands, different brands, consider the technology, the experience of that, of owning that product. And as a result of that technology shift, they are very much more open-minded about the brands and the make models they will consider. So I think most consumers are being pragmatic and focusing more and more and increasingly on the market that is there and is available to them today. There's no doubt it's confusing. And the headlines every day, particularly in some of the national press, make it even more confusing for consumers. But focusing on the live market and then retailers paying the role that they do play typically very well in helping consumers to then navigate that confusion and support them through that EV buying journey. The combination of those two things, I think, is going to be the right path for the consumer over the coming months as we continue to navigate what is a very distorted new vehicle market.
Yeah, it certainly is that. Auto Trader has really got into the new car promotion. Haven't you? You've got this massive advertising campaign going on at the moment. I've seen the radio, I've heard the radio adverts and seen it at pretty much everywhere I look. Why is Auto Trader pushing new car so hard? I mean, are you not a used car marketplace?
I think one of the reasons is that we've spent the last 6 to 12 months hearing from our retailer partners, hearing from manufacturers about quite how challenging hitting the ZEV mandate, stimulating new EV demand is going to be. And much of the campaign, the What Car partnership, a load of the work that we've been doing and a load of the activity that we've been pushing has been around, right, well, how do we help the industry to solve this problem, help through our brand, help through our products, but also help through the influence and the data that we have and can bring to conversations with the wider industry, with the government, with all the stakeholders that will influence what will make this EV transition a success. So whether it's the World EV Day, whether it's the work we've been doing with the charging providers, we're trying to help to create an ecosystem around electric vehicles that is there to support this transition, not just for today, but for the coming years, because we know the path is set. We know this is now a journey that we are all on together. And we're right in the middle of that and want to be right in the middle of that change.
And what can dealers do to help push this at this point in time? You know, there's only so far that they can go, isn't it, when it comes to attracting these customers in? I mean, is there any tips or advice you've got for them?
Well, we've seen a 50% growth in new car stock on our platform year on year, and that is very much driven by retailers wanting their vehicles to be visible and online. If those new cars are not online today, then consumers won't be finding them and won't be discovering them as part of their buying journey. So we're seeing more retailers putting more new cars specifically online, making them available and visible for sale. We've also seen some brilliant work done by some retailers on merchandising those cars really effectively. We always talk about the importance of digital forecourt as well as physical forecourt. Well, we've seen some retailers really embrace that when it comes to new cars and do a brilliant job of getting excellent imagery, descriptions, like really bringing the vehicle to life online for consumers. And we know that just means that consumers will go further down the buying journey, are more likely to commit to that vehicle being the right vehicle for them, and then are turning up on the forecourt or speaking to the retailer or going through the online journey to actually complete the purchase of that vehicle. So we're seeing retailers really lean into this and really do some excellent work around making sure that their cars are there, are online, are for sale, and then merchandised brilliantly.
What about consumers who are considering making this switch to EV? Is now a good time to do it in terms of from a price point? Are all these huge big discounts that are coming down the line? Should they be waiting for those a little bit further as this year rolls on?
Well, I think we have already seen some great finance offers in the market. We've seen some brilliant 0% finance deposit contribution deals. We've also seen some reasonably significant headline price discounts from manufacturers. I think this quarter we will see, as this final quarter of the year progresses, we'll see an increase in that discounting behaviour. So I would say, coming to market this quarter, exploring the deals available would be a good time to be in market for a new car. We know that the typical buying journey is somewhere between 2 and 3 months. We know that most consumers look at a number of brands, weigh up a number of different options. And that's why we've gone so big with this September activation and September activity, is to really encourage as many people into the market as we can, so that over the coming months we're seeing those buyers or potential buyers convert through into sales volumes for our retailer partners.
And finally, Catherine, what's your view for the rest of the year? What's the outlook for as 2024 kind of rolls on and draws to a close?
I would say I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. That's not too much of a politician's answer? I
You're
think
allowed it. It's fine.
I think um, between the momentum that we're seeing, it's early days in September, but these first few days of September, between retailer feedback, data we see on our platform, consumer engagement, and metrics that we track, these first few days are really important, that market momentum, to then determine the rest of this quarter. And I think the lead indicators that we see today are pretty positive on all of those measures, both on new and used car. Macro data looks pretty robust. Data we're seeing on site looks pretty robust. Feedback from retailers, very mixed, depending on stock profile, vehicle cohort that they're operating in. But overall, there's a used car market there. Transactions are up year on year. Prices are pretty stable. Challenges over supply and how people get hold of that supply. But where people have got supply, they're absolutely selling cars. So there's a market there for sure, and there's plenty of opportunity.
Plenty of opportunity. We like that. Catherine, thank you ever so much for giving up your time today. I really appreciate it. It's lovely to see you.
Thanks a lot, James.
Thank you. That's Catherine Faiers from Auto Trader. So for the very latest on the motor trade, you can check out our website. It's cardealermagazine.co.uk, where we have daily updates. And if you want the inside view on the week's headlines, check out my subscriber-only Substack newsletter. You can find it at cardealer.substack.com. I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.